listeners, right at the top of the show, we wanted to tell you about a cool thing that we've got going on in February, and that is a new online e-learning course called The Essential Guide to Landscape Design. It's with award-winning garden designer Courtney Olander. Carol, you know Courtney, right?
Absolutely. Courtney has written many design articles for us. She is a wonderful landscape designer based in Seattle. And just in the last issue, she talked about a solution to an entryway problem, which was it was so brilliant. And I would love to learn how she thinks.
Yeah, exactly. And I got a peek at her course and I got to see this course. It's over 4 hours of instruction. She really talks about if you want to start a brand new garden, but then for people like us who have an established garden, but you just want to take it to the next level. And the great part about this Essential Guide to Landscape course is that Courtney is doing Q&As too. So if you have particular questions that you want a landscape designer to solve, you have that opportunity. So go to finegardening.com/landscape design to get registered today. Again, the course starts February 22nd and it's sponsored by Monrovia Plants. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Let's Argue About Plants, the podcast for people who love plants. Happy New Year!
But not always the same ones. I'm Carol Collins. I'm associate editor at Fine Gardening Magazine.
And I'm Danielle Sherry. I am the executive editor of Fine Gardening Magazine. And we're kicking off the new year, Carol. And I gotta say, it just took us 100 takes to get that intro right. We are feeling a little rusty in the new year here, but we're coming at you, folks, and wishing you a happy new year. And with that, let's talk about plants because, winter is the time when I start making lists. Just lists aplenty of looking around, thinking about the whole season. I'm downloading all the photos from my phone to start anew and make room on my cell phone. And I don't know about you, Carol, but I'm looking outside. We got some snow finally, and I'm truly appreciating a lot of my winter plants, which is our topic today, winter stunners. And what does winter stunner mean to you, Carol?
I think it's the ones that are unexpected in the winter that you don't maybe notice it the rest of the year. And then in winter, you're like, ooh, you are a stunner. That's kind of how I went with it.
I love it. Ooh, you are a stunner. All right. We're going to have to say that after every single plant. We'll really annoy the listeners, but I love that. Talking about the new year and plants and making lists and what do I need? I will say that a couple years ago, I looked around and I noticed I did not have enough winter stunners. At that point, I had really good winter structure. I had a lot of woody plants, a lot of contorted branching plants, but not truly, I don't think, enough colorful conifers or evergreen perennial. I didn't really have a whole lot of stunners. So 2 years ago, I made concerted efforts to put some more of those plants into the landscape. And I'm liking that decision this year. It's making me happier to look out to the bleak garden and see something like, ooh, you're stunning, How about you? Did you start your garden with thinking about winter interest and really making sure to incorporate that? Or is it something that's come later?
It's when I started with this garden, and now it's been more than 10 years, I think 12 years, it was sort of a blank slate. There were some very overgrown things that had been planted, decades before by someone else, but really, just a lot of open, grassy, nothing. So I've been adding to it, but I still don't think I have enough winter stunners.
Yeah, well, and I guess it depends on where you live. You and I live in New England, so it's important to have winter interest because, we fall into the doldrums of winter sometimes starting in November, for goodness sake. And then that can last all the way up and through March. So you're talking several months of needing something in the garden that really looks like something. So, well, what is something in your garden that right now you're going, ooh, you're a stunner?
I'm going to start with one, and this is one that was in my garden, but also in the woods around my garden, and it is American beech, and that's Fagus grandifolia, zones 3 to 9, and obviously American beech. It's our native beech tree, and it is a tree, right? The mature the mature height can be 50 to 80 feet. But really, the ones that are around me are nice, in human scale, 15 feet, 20 feet tall. And what I find really stunning about them is that they hold on to their leaves the whole winter. And I love the color. It's like this beautiful buff color that starts out really warm and rich. In this time of year, right in the beginning of winter, it's like almost like a leather color. And then as the winter progresses, it bleaches out, it gets papery. Every time the wind blows, you see movement. And to me, it's just this nice contrast to like the conifers and the bare branches of other trees. It's really different. And so that's one that I don't think about this tree anytime the rest of the year. It's pretty, it's got wildlife value, it makes nuts that the animals like, but in the winter it really stands out. It doesn't need a lot of special care either. It's full sun to partial shade, moist, well-drained soil. There are theories that the reason that this tree holds on to its leaves for so long is that it's an adaptation. It can grow in rather poor conditions, and it holds on to these carbon-rich, nitrogen-rich leaves all winter, and then drops them in the spring right before it's going to need those nutrients itself. So
interesting.
It's natural mulch that it holds on to, because the leaves from other trees, they blow all around all winter long, but this one is like, I'm keeping these for myself.
Right? It's like a little squirrel. It's just hoarding all of its leaves instead of its little nuts.
Yes, and I learned a new vocabulary word when I was looking up why does it do this. The word is marquescence, and it's something that the tree doesn't do that the other trees that are deciduous do, and it forms this. It doesn't form the breakaway layer at the base of a leaf. So it holds as tight can be, and then the leaf is pushed out by the new growth in the spring.
That is so fascinating. I mean, I think we just need to stop the episode now. I mean, that, like, I'm good. That is so fascinating. I always wondered what it was about. We have a pretty good native population here in, Connecticut, where you and I both live. And I've always wondered, why do the beech trees hold on to those leaves? And anyone who's watching this or has decided to watch the video instead of listen to the podcast, you can notice in the video that Carol actually has a representative branch of American beech tree behind her, and you can kind of get a sense of that. That was brilliant description audio-wise, that it's this tanned leather kind of hue to it. Absolutely gorgeous. I've always known beech trees. They were known in my family as the, not that we're hunters, but as hunters' foes, because they hold those leaves and they're kind of the color of deer during deer hunting season. So they thwart the hunters' visual cues when they're out there, because they really are. They're just frozen in time with those leaves. That is so cool. I love that. I mean, I don't love it when it drops all its leaves in the spring and then all those leaves blow into my garden, but I do like that whole concept. That's a cool plant. Carol, did you say the zones on the American beech?
It is super hardy. It is hardy zones 3 to 9. So
okay.
It's and I think pretty widely distributed too, especially in the eastern United States.
Nice. That is awesome. I love that. Good choice. Good choice. All right. Well, so I'm going to do in my winter stunners, we do 4 plants. I've got 2 that I added within the last couple of years when I actually really noticed that I was lacking winter stunners in my garden. And then 2 oldies but goodies that I've had for quite a while. So one of the first ones that I added a couple years ago, was winter gold white fir. And that's Aby's concolor winter gold. It's zones 3 to 8. This is a dwarf conifer, 3 to 4 feet tall and wide, max over its lifetime. So, nice and chunky. I actually decided to put this conifer into a container because it's a species that's known to do really, really well in a container. So I have a frost-proof terracotta pot, fairly large, that I have this planted in. And I have it kind of up against my foundation. So this is something that I have to be cognizant of to go in and water. Because it is under that eave line of my foundation, but it really does a good job, because it is an evergreen, of masking that kind of ugly concrete foundation in a spot on the corner of my house. It is absolutely beautiful. So it's got gray-green needles during most of the season that are soft, fairly long, but then when the temps start cooling down a bit, it turns bright, brilliant golden yellow. It almost looks like a larch, how, larches turn that golden color. But the great thing about this Aby's, this fir tree, is that it holds the needles. It doesn't drop the needles like the larch does. It's just going to be a nice, almost kind of an irregularly kind of lumpy pyramid shape eventually. Mine right now kind of looks more like a misshapen cotton ball, but I know that doesn't sound alluring, but it really is kind of nice. I like it quite a bit. Full sun, moist, well-drained soil, and as I said, with a lot of dwarf conifers, they do make good candidates for container growing. And this was definitely one that I'm doing in that area. So that was winter gold white fir, zones 3 to 8. And it's kind of a stunner. And I'm really liking how it's looking these last couple of years. All right, Carol, that was a surprising first choice for you, by the way. A deciduous tree, but that holds on to its leaves. So what do you got up next for us for a winter stunner?
So my next one is all about the stems, and it is red osier dogwood, Cornus ceracea, and it's hardy from zones 3 to 7. So another really hardy one, although this one really doesn't love the heat or humidity of the deep south. But a lot of people, when they think about red stems in the winter, will think of the blood twig dogwood, which is Cornus sanguinea, which is not native and can be a little bit invasive in some places if it's in the, right or wrong conditions, wetlands, for example. So if you were thinking about blood twig dogwood for the, colored stems in winter, this is a nice North American native species that could be plant this instead of that situation. It likes full sun to partial shade, and although it's a wetland plant in its natural habitat, it can tolerate just average garden soil quite well. And it will spread by suckers if there's enough moisture. So this is one that, it really doesn't mind if you have a wet spot that's a problem. If you have clay, that's a problem. It's good in rain gardens, but really it's quite adaptable. And it looks good, not just in the winter with these sort of, it's not, okay, I will admit, it is not as bright red as the blood twig dogwood. It's more like sort of a honey color or an amber color with like a blush tint or like a reddish tint. Although some of the cultivars can be really, pretty red. And if you do rejuvenation pruning, the new growth is generally redder than the rest of it. But it's, I think of it as like the eco-friendly option here for, for the red twigs, and I think it is really quite charming. And because it can sucker, it's a it can be a pass along plant that you can share with other gardeners too. Yeah, I think I covered all the full sun and partial shade stuff, right? It's a pretty easy care one. I didn't tell you how big it gets though. It's a nice small size, at max 6 to 9 feet tall, 7 to 10 feet wide. And obviously if you're doing the rejuvenation pruning, that will probably keep it a little smaller.
Yeah. I always loved, so Ed Gregan, who's one of our pruning aficionados that we go to for a lot of our pruning articles at Fine Gardening, he always holds off to do that pruning on the willows and the dogwoods until we reach kind of the holiday season. And then he does it and he always recommends, then you can use all of those branches. You're doing yourself a favor for the plant, but you're also doing yourself a favor for holiday decorations, because that's a great time to prune and a great time to use those stems, those colorful stems in, your holiday decor. So who knew? Ed Gregan, he's got a little Martha Stewart in him apparently. But yeah, I love that. I think that's great. I've got, I do have blood twig, and I've got, the native red osier dogwood as well. And, you're right. I mean, not as vibrant, not as like in your face. However, I will say when both of them bloom, because they do have those, kind of umbly white flowers. This is completely anecdotal, but I notice a lot more pollinators on that red osier native species than I do on that blood twig. Now, take it as you will, but I will say that kind of says something to me. My native pollinators seem to prefer the native plant. So
I have heard that it's fragrant. So I had tried planting 8 of these bare root totally too late in the year. It was late October. Like, long story short, only one made it and it hasn't bloomed yet. But I have read that the blooms they're small, but they're fragrant. Is that, do you think they're fragrant?
I've noticed kind of like a honey scent. I guess that's the best way to describe it. If like Clethra is a really, really intense, like perfumey honey scent. It's like very, very slight in that. I only know that too because I've got the red osier. It's kind of like up against our front steps, which we don't use that often. But when I do, I go down those steps at the right time, I do notice that it blooms a bit. And it has a little bit of the fragrance to it. But I love that choice. All right, so I'm gonna hit you with another conifer. I mean, that was just where my mind went, and I feel like I'm gonna start with the 2 newer or newbies. That this is another one that I added within 2 years to increase my colorful conifer quotient. There, say that 3 times fast. In my garden, and this is a Japanese white pine. It's Goldilocks Japanese white pine, so it's a Pinus parviflora. Goldilocks. Now this is zones 5 to 7, so this is a relatively kind of snug range of people that can grow this plant. But 6 to 8 feet tall and wide, full sun to partial shade, and well-drained soil. The big thing with pines is they really need well-drained soil. They don't like to sit in wet, soggy conditions. You're just asking for issues with that. But it's a really cool pine. It has this contorted bonsai type shape, kind of an amorphous habit, if you will, but lovely, soft, those white pine needles that you know of that are, a bluey green with a bit of a silver stripe to them. But then I love this particular one, Goldilocks, because it looks like it went to the hair salon in the 80s and it asked for like a frosting. How they used to do that in the 80s and just the tips of your hair were frosted. Well, that's what this one looks like. And the tips that are frosted are kind of a golden, creamy color. And, go to our show notes at finegardening.com, go into this episode and check out the tips. It truly is an 80s frosted monstrosity. It's gorgeous, but it's so funny to look at. It has these tiny little adorable cones on it too. They almost look like Honey, I Shrunk the Cones. They're teeny tiny in comparison to the size of the plant. But that's, I think, really interesting too. And those cones hold on through the winter as well. And it's constantly exhibiting those golden tips. So this isn't just something that happens in the spring or in the summer, which you're kind of accustomed to with a lot of these colorful conifers. They push their new growth, and that's, really, really vibrant, and then it fades to green. Well, this one just keeps those golden tips going. Eventually, mine's a baby. So eventually it gets exfoliating bark, just like a lot of, the Japanese white pines. That's kind of their claim to fame. They do get like little peelings of silver kind of around the bark structure. However, mine is more of a prostrate habit. It had, I don't know if accidentally, if it was in, the discount bin at the nursery, but its main leader got topped. So it's kind of doing more of a ground hugging bonsai shape to it right now, which was perfect for the spot I wanted to put it, which was along a stone wall. I had ripped out some carex and kind of made a spot for it. So in the winter, close to the road, there's this stone wall, and it's kind of doing this contorted fall over the stone wall, or it's starting to fall. It's really creeping at this point because it's so new. But I really, really love this plant. It's the one thing I will say that you have to watch out for. I've grown many different various pines in the past in my garden, and some are more prone to pine borers than others. I've had a really hard time with dragon eye pine, for instance. But so far, knock on wood, this one's doing just good, fine. Do you have any pines, Carol, in your cadre of plants?
Oh, no, just one deceased white pine that's about 50 feet tall.
Holy macaroni!
It's in just the wrong spot, but the wildlife loves it. It's still, and it's been very polite about dropping branches, just every now and then. But yeah, other than that and its seedlings, I don't have any ornamental pines, but it's such a nice species. And I think, once the big pine is gone, I probably should add some more back into the landscape.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, standard Eastern white pine too, it's a gorgeous plant. It's a really lovely, soft, textural wonder. So I feel like we could probably say any pine for that matter is a winter stunner. Even a dead one. All right, Carol. Predictably, I've come in with 2 conifers, woody plants. You have given us a tree and a shrub. You're very well rounded. I'm guessing there's a perennial coming up next.
Oh,
no. Oh, darn it.
No. No, I did all woodies for this one too.
Nice.
Yeah. But I did peek at your list because you were a good girl and you got all your plant lists in early for this podcast and the next one. And so I peeked and I saw you had a lot of conifers, and I tried to come up with things that were not conifers. That's sort of
I love it. I love it. Carol is working for you listeners. She is making sure we are a diverse podcast. So what is your next non-conifer on your list?
Okay, so this is one I must admit I do not grow, but I was on a walk in New Haven. I was waiting for somebody who had an appointment at Yale, and there is this historic cemetery near the Yale campus called the Grove Street Cemetery. It's one of the oldest cemeteries in the United States, I think. And it's also sort of a wee little arboretum. They have beautiful, beautiful trees and shrubs that, not all of them are as old as the cemetery, but like some just like beautiful mature specimens. And so I was walking, and this was just this week. And I was thinking about this podcast, and I came upon a stewartia pseudocamellia, which is the Japanese stewartia, and it is gorgeous. It is so beautiful in the winter without its leaves. It's hardy from zones 5 to 8, I should say, and it's sort of your full sun, partial shade, moist, well drained, fertile soil. It has this exfoliating bark in the winter that is shades of silver, buff, rusty orange, gold. It's got these sort of, I hate the word muscular for branches, but it's like it's an athletic looking tree with just like beautiful, beautiful branch structure. And it's small and slow growing. So at max, it'll get 20 to 40 feet tall, 15 to 20 feet wide. The one that I was looking at was probably not, maybe 20 feet total tall, but it could also be grown as a multi-stem shrub. This one was being grown as a tree. And it's beautiful year round, as well as having this like beautiful winter look. In the summer, it has like, lovely lush green leaves and these camellia-like flowers with orange centers in early summer. They almost look like a single white rose or camellia, the pseudocamellia being its species name. And then, sort of epic reddish orange to burgundy fall color. I think I was sure that this plant must have been covered on the pod before. And so I did a search, and there was one time when an expert named it as a great fall color plant, but I was surprised that it hasn't popped up before now, because what a plant.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I feel like we had done a video amongst the editors, and I may have talked about it before, but maybe in a different context, or it was a different cultivar or something. But in a video that we had done years ago of all of our editors of, best small trees, that was one of my faves. Yeah, 100%. Like, you win this podcast episode, because that is a stunning winter plant. Absolutely stunning winter plant. And dare I say, if you were going to plant one tree, I feel bad saying this because all the native people are going to be like, what? I can't believe you would say a non-native tree. But it's a 4-season tree, that like it's a truly 4-season tree. And just chills. And muscular and athletic, I think, is the perfect way to describe it. It really, really is. Yeah. So pseudocamellia, stewartia pseudocamellia is zones 5 to 8, you said, right?
Yes, zones 5 to 8. And, just like you're a good spot in the garden, right? It likes the sun for the flowering, but it will take some partial shade because, I think it's a kind of a woodland plant in Japan where it's native too.
Yeah. I have one that's in full sun, and then I have one that's in partial shade, and I definitely get better flowering on the one that's in full sun. I will say, like, it takes a couple years for that exfoliating bark to really take a hold, but once it does, it is, yeah. I'm not going to go any further. You described it perfectly. All right. So shocker of shockers. Trust me, I did not go 4 for 4 on the conifers, but I did do another conifer. I went 3 for 4 because I just feel like it's so important to include conifers in the garden. I know broadleaf evergreens aren't going to grow in a lot of listeners' areas. We've got a lot of people in zones 3, a lot of people in zone 4. It can be really hard to grow those broadleaf evergreens and those, desiccating winds in some of those zones. But conifers are like, they're going to get you through. And, they don't take a backseat in spring and summer either. They truly do shine as a backbone or the bones of the garden year round. So this is one that was one of the first plants that I planted in my garden. I think surprisingly, I haven't talked about it on the podcast before because admittedly, I don't know what cultivar I have of this plant. It was one of the first plants I've ever purchased from Broken Arrow Nursery in Hamden, Connecticut. And it is a blue deodar cedar. So that's Cedrus deodara, and zones 6B-ish to 9. You see more deodar cedars out west. I mean, that is typically where you see them. You drive through Seattle, you'll see a lot of these trees in various different forms. I'm pushing it with my zonal range here. But I either have the cultivar Divinely Blue or Feelin' Blue. I'm not sure which one I have, but both of those cultivars have been offered through Broken Arrow Nursery. I reached out to the nursery too. I'm like, I bought it in, 2011. What might I have gotten? Both of these particular cultivars are a little bit hardier, are known to be a little bit cold hardy. So they actually slot them as zone 5. So perhaps that's why this plant has survived and done okay for me. But it's a semi-dwarf. It's got these really, really beautiful clusters of short blue-green needles that are along these kind of, I don't know, weeping branches, if you will. These two, I'll say 2 cultivars are, again, an irregular prostrate shape. You can stake them upright to give you more of this, kind of ghostly looking conifer tree. But I like this one just kind of creeping along on my hillside in a very ground cover-esque fashion. It's got silver bark to it. So in those exposed areas on the stem, because the leaves are all, or the needles are all tufted along the stems, you can kind of see that, beautiful silver bark shining through, but just a gorgeous glaucous blue color. 3 to 5 feet tall eventually, and about 5 feet wide. So that kind of gives you an idea. It's stumpy and kind of does this splay thing. Full sun, acidic, well-drained soil. So I feel like that's also working in my favor because we tend to, in this area of the country, have a little bit more acidity in our soils. I would say that most deodar cedars are zone 7. So if you're listening in a warmer section of the country, there are a lot of other species and cultivars of this that are going to do really well of this cedar. But for now, mine is hanging in there and it looks really cool in the winter. Admittedly, I'm going to have to move some stuff around it. I planted a 9 bark a little too close to mine, and now it is casting a bit too much shade into the area of my deodar cedar. So you know what? Choice conifer, 9 bark. The 9 bark is getting the boot and it's going to get transplanted elsewhere. So give it a try. I would say Divinely Blue or Feelin' Blue are excellent cultivars of deodar cedar zones 5, 6B to 9. All right, Carol, bring it on home. What's up next on the Carol Winter Stunners? Ooh, your stunner list.
So this is another one that I came across in the Grove Street Cemetery, and it is one that I had photographed previously for a different an article. It's star magnolia, and that's Magnolia stellata, and it is hardy from zones 4 to 8, which is really quite surprising how hardy it is. I think of people think of magnolias as not being hardy because sometimes their flowers get zapped by frost if you're trying to grow them too far north, but the plant itself is like bone hardy. I first photographed the star magnolia at Scott Arboretum at Swarthmore for an article that we did on magnolias years ago. And it is just a gorgeous spring tree. It's small. It gets only like 10 to 20 feet tall, 10 to 15 feet wide. Again, it likes full sun, moist, rich, well-drained soil, plenty of organic matter. So good spot, good soil. It really appreciates, and it does not appreciate soil extremes, too dry, too wet. Star magnolia is like, I just will not.
Yeah, I'm done.
Right.
Check me out.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm sorry, darlings. I'm a star. So it is mostly grown for those late winter to early spring blooms. But in winter, again, I came across this plant and I was like, wow, it is gorgeous. It has this beautiful branch structure, many branches. It's kind of like fractals, any place it can put a branch, it puts a branch. And then it has already got, early winter, already has its flower buds for next spring. And they look almost like big pointy pussy willows. They're covered in these fine silvery hairs. I think it's called pubescence.
Okay.
Another vocab word for this episode. But
we're going to have to put a glossary in the show notes.
But I mean, super, super pretty. And just the shape of those, the shape of the branches. I put a photo in the show notes of, the branch structure silhouetted against the sky. And I put another picture of the buds, which it was raining, so they're a little wet. And I think normally they'd look a little cuter and fuzzier. And then the other picture is from the Scott Arboretum years ago when this was in, not same plant, but same species, was in full bloom. But it's a tree that like you find yourself talking out loud to. I was like, you are going to look so good next spring because it was just loaded with buds. So I think this would be a fun plant to live with and to, keep company with through the winter months. And then, in spring, you're off to the races.
Yes. That is another like stunning small tree too, that could have made that episode if we've ever done that episode. I don't know, but that's a great little tree, just an awesome little tree. I have a water lily, the cultivar water lily, which is slightly fragrant. And that star flower that opens has a little blush of pink to the middle. Most of them are white, pure white, but this one's got a little blush of pink. But I'm so bummed that I didn't do that one because honestly, I was walking around my garden going, all right, here we go. Winter stunners. I got to find something. I love it when we do them seasonally because I can just go out in the garden and take some photos. But yeah, that's one I missed. You know why? Because it's on the backside of my house. So in winter, I don't really go in that area that much. So man, you say right plant, wrong place, I guess, for me. But that's a great one. That's a great one. All right, I'm going to do a deciduous tree too, and I think this is going to come as no surprise to anybody. Carol, you've talked about this on the podcast, but I couldn't do a Winter Stunners episode without talking about coral bark maple, and that's Acer palmatum, Sengokaku. It's zones 5 to 9. It's just a great little maple tree. It's only going to get usually about 10 to 15 feet tall and wide, sometimes 20 to 25 feet if it's in optimum conditions. Still, that's a nice little small tree. Full sun to partial shade. Know that if you push it too far into full sun, if you live in more southern reaches here, it might burn out on those beautiful chartreuse leaves that it pushes in spring and through summer. So you might get a little, browning of the edges. So if you're further south, you're going to want to put this tree in partial shade. Moist, well-drained soil. I will say drought tolerant once established. I have mine in a really droughty area of the garden, actually on a slope and terrible soil, but that's besides the point. It's not happy there, but it's definitely doing okay. And here's the thing. It drops its leaves in fall. It has beautiful butter yellow fall color, drops those leaves, and then coral bark, all the branches, and primarily mostly the new growth branches. So again, I'm really good about making sure that I prune this tree yearly because it's that new growth that really is the most vibrant. And it is a shocking, for anybody who's watching this podcast, it's very similar to the color of the wall I have behind me in my office here, but it is a gorgeous coral red color. And the photo that I'm putting in the show notes is me standing on our patio, kind of looking out towards the deciduous forest this time of year, which is gray. Gray as gray can be. Everything's gray, except for this tree, which is see-through because it's a deciduous tree, but it's just lighting up that view because it's just covered in these beautiful red branches. Winter is my favorite time with this tree. I've lived with this tree since we moved in. I think it was the first tree I planted, and I'm just completely in love with it. And it brings me greatest joy this time of year when I'm looking out my kitchen window and I see tons of little chickadees just sitting on the branches. And there's these red branches and these black and white adorable little chickadees sitting there, probably eating at the little spring buds that are on the tree. But I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that because it is just a charming, stunning winter sight. And yeah, I just love this tree.
It's a good one.
And now, because everything sounds better with a British accent, here's Peter. Aw, and he's got the winter blues.
Okay, I'll admit it. I'm starting to get the winter blues. The holidays are so far behind us now, I can't even catch a glimpse of them in the rearview mirror. And it's cold. Not just mildly chilly, but really cold here in New England. We are, I fear, on the doorstep of my least favourite season, the winter doldrums. Perhaps you live in an area of the country where you don't know what this means, so allow me to explain. In late January here in Connecticut, everything is grey. The ground, the sky, the surrounding trees. Everything has a muted, almost, but not quite, ethereal quality to it. Like when you pull a brilliantly coloured picture into Photoshop and accidentally hit the remove saturation button, watching as that vibrant picture becomes really washed out and sad. Sure, we get brief moments of excitement when it snows and everything is coated with sparkling white. But that only lasts for a few hours generally, before the ploughs come and the scene is ruined by bright reddish-orange road sand. Listening to Danielle and Carol speak about plants that are stunners in winter, though, has given me a bit of hope that it is possible to infuse some much-needed colour into the landscape during this very bleak time. I've taken some notes, and will be sure that some of these selections make it onto my spring shopping list. Because peonies and poppies are lovely, but when I really need some beauty is in January, not June.
You know, Carol, peonies are my favorite, but Peter's right. What do peonies and poppies do for us, from November to March? Not a whole heck of a lot, do they?
That's true. Well, that's true of a lot of plants, but yeah.
It is. Well, I'm anxious to see some more winter stunners because I'm in that winter frame of mind. So let's see what our expert has to say about winter stunners. And, she's from a very cold area of the country.
Hi, I'm Michelle Provaznik. I'm the CEO of the American Public Gardens Association, and our association advocates and represents over 600 member gardens of different types around the country. So public gardens, arboretums, botanic gardens, that sort of thing. And we advocate and champion for public gardens all around the country.
And I'm so excited to have Michelle here because we were actually just talking not too long ago that it has been 10 plus years since we met out in Fort Collins, Colorado. And Michelle has been engrossed in creating public gardens, creating botanic gardens from the ground up. But the fact that she's from Colorado, Michelle, you must have winter stunners that you just have always gravitated towards.
Oh, absolutely. We get snow and throughout the season, but we also have times when there's no snow. So trying to find plants in the garden that really look good in either situation is something we've gotten really good at. And I definitely have some of my favorites.
Now, what zone are you, Michelle?
We are zone 5.
Okay. All right. And you're at a pretty high elevation as well, right? In Colorado?
About 4,500 feet here.
Wow.
Colorado. Yeah.
That's crazy. All right. Hit me with your first plant. What was your first winter stunner?
Well, here in the Mountain West, we don't have many broadleaf evergreens. And we have a lot of evergreens. We have the pines and the spruces and the firs and all those, but broadleaf evergreens isn't something that we have a lot of. And there is one type that I love, and it's the Arctostaphylos or the manzanitas. And there's one that's the Coloradoensis, or chieftain manzanita, and it is just a beautiful plant in the wintertime. It is more of a spreading ground cover type of plant. It gets 18 to 3 feet tall, but it can cover a wide variety or wide expansive area. And I have it in my front yard on a berm, and it just spills over, and it's beautiful, and it's almost surprising to see something that green like that in our climate. And then when it catches the snow, it's just so pretty. And it also has a cinnamon colored bark, which is a really nice feature as well. So love that plant. In the winter, I actually love it year round. It requires very little maintenance. It can take full sun, part shade. So it's just a really great plant for our landscapes, and it's native.
So I love that in our broadleaf evergreens here in the East Coast, but we often deal with the problem of desiccation. So if we're having a particularly like very cold, dry, windy winter, a lot of our rhododendrons will start to curl the leaves. Does the manzanita that you're talking about, does that do that?
It will do it in a particularly dry year, but for the most part, they tend to persist and hang on. What's nice is most of them are more of a ground cover. So if we get a snowy year, the snow actually protects them quite a bit as well. So it does just depend upon the weather for sure.
Amazing. Amazing. I love that choice. Now, all right. So hit me with your next winter stunner. That was an unexpected choice, I will say. I'm surprised by that choice.
Another one that I love, and these grow across the country, but for something with structure, constantly looking for different types of structure in the winter garden. And there's a tree that I love, and I've planted it in both of my yards because of the structure it provides in the shade. But and that is the Kentucky coffee tree, or the gymnocladus. And I just love that tree. The structure in the winter of it, it's upright but very wide, kind of clean branches, and so it really has interesting structure in and of itself. But the thing that it's also known for is their big kind of D-shaped pods, seed pods that they have, and they're leathery and tough. And I've had friends who harvest them from the ground and put them into flower displays and that, dried flower arrangements and that sort of thing. But they add really interesting interest to your tree. Again, whether it's in snow or not, it provides some interesting structure to the garden. So that's a fun one for me as well.
Michelle, what are we looking at for a zonal range on that? I hear coffee tree, and of course I think Costa Rica. Wait, you can grow a Costa Rican tree up in Colorado?
Yeah, no, I'd have to look at the zones. I haven't looked at it lately, but we grow them all up and down the Front Range in Colorado. Not a problem. Again, I've had them in my yard. We had them at the botanic garden I worked at, and they get to be nice sized shade trees here. What's nice is they tend to lose their leaves somewhat early, and so if you get an early snow or a late season snow, they don't get a lot of damage from snows collecting on the leaves. So they're also fairly drought tolerant once established, so that works really well out here as well.
Oh man. All right. I'm in trouble. I'm not going to have to start putting more things on my Christmas list here for next year, or my spring shopping list. All right. So again, shocking. I thought for sure you were going to be coming at me with like an aspen, I really, really did. So I'm excited with these choices.
Yes. And those are amazing, but they're up in the mountains, and down in our landscapes, just a little bit different. So another thing that I'm always looking for in the garden in winter is just a little bit of color, right? It's either brown or it's white with snow. So one thing that we love here is the red twig dogwood, the cornucercia. And and just that bright red color up against the snow is just amazing. And if you keep them pruned where you're pruning out some of the dead wood, that allows more of the bright red branches to keep growing, and they just add really nice contrast to the landscape. They look great in the snow, but they also look great like if you've got a bunch of evergreens behind them. They really stand out and provide some nice contrast in the garden.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that you're right, that bright red against the white of snow, or even, we tend to say we have like the grayest winter around sometimes in the Northeast. And that will be one of the things that no matter what, just lights up and really breaks up that color.
Yeah, it just provides something, a focal point in a rather dreary landscape at this time of year. So.
And you're so I love that you give the tip of don't be afraid to prune some of the cornices hard, because the pruning, it's the new growth that really is that most vibrant color.
It gives you the brightest color. So I mean, go for it. You can cut out about a third of it a year, just cut them down to the ground and let the new stuff come up, and it's perfect. So
that's awesome. All right, well, what else do you have maybe perhaps on your list?
The last one I have is really about texture. So we have the native Rabbitbrush here in Colorado, the Chrysothemis, and there's different varieties. There's dwarf varieties and more of the species, the standard variety, but they have really fine textured leaves all the time, and they turn more gray and in the winter, but they also have kind of fluffy, fuzzy seed heads that kind of cover the plant. And so they provide really interesting texture again in the dreariness of winter, but also when they get snow, those seed heads kind of collect the snow in bunches, and it's just so pretty to see them covered in snow. And when you can go out on the prairie and just see fields of them with the snow kind of kissing the tops of them, it's really a stunning sight to see. And again, they're a native, and oh my gosh, hardy as all get out, and really don't require much care. You can prune them back in the spring if you want to, but just an amazing plant for winter too.
And where, as far as siting it on that particular plant, the Rabbitbrush, where would you site that in the garden? I mean, give me an idea. How large of a plant are we talking about? Sorry, I'm an East Coast girl. I'm not familiar with this one.
Yeah. So there's a dwarf variety that gets to maybe a maximum of 2 feet. And I have those along a seating wall on a patio in my backyard, and I don't have any irrigation to them, which is phenomenal, and so it's part of the reason why they're there. So they added a nice little hedge along that wall. But the regular species, right? The size they'll get depends upon how much water they get. Ultimately, because they're drought tolerant, but they'll get up to like 4-ish feet. In the landscape, and if they get a lot of irrigation, they get a little more leggy and can get a little bit bigger. So then you can shear them back if you want, and if you prune them back a little bit, it will keep them more compact and tighter branching and that sort of thing. But they can be a specimen plant because they get really bright yellow flowers at late summer into fall. I mean, they're just stunning. The pollinators love them. The butterflies and the bees absolutely love them, and so they can be a focal point, or if you've got a native garden, they look great in that too. But I have them in other beds as well. So
and just having that silver magical foliage, and then I can just picture that frosted with a little bit of snowfall must be magical.
Yes, absolutely.
That's amazing. That's amazing. All right. Well, listeners, I just wanted to remind you, just like when you hear Carol's and my plant recommendations, for all of Michelle's plant recommendations, we have them listed on the website on the podcast show notes for this episode. And we're even going to throw in some photos in there too, which I'm excited to see because I don't know most of these plants. So Michelle, thank you so much for joining us today on the episode.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's been my pleasure. Very fun.
All right, Carol, well, I'm feeling a little less winter bluesy right now after we just talked about all these fabulous plants.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you've got the winter blues, plants can help you out. They make me feel better no matter what time of year.
True. Anytime you got the blues, plants make you feel better. So that's your tip of the day, people. New Year's resolution time. Plant more plants.